What a head, son! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy FPL and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to be taking you guys through my initial draft for the upcoming FPL 2021/2022 season. Firstly, I know that the fixtures were released and then the prices were released and then finally the game came out a couple of weeks ago, but please excuse me, I was having a little bit of fun over on my second channel where we have been focusing on Euro 2020 fantasy content. I will be doing more general footballing content on that channel, so if you guys haven't checked it out yet, I will leave a link down in the description below. But going on to this specific video, as I mentioned, my initial draft, I'm going to be covering a little reaction to the fixtures. I will probably be doing a more in-depth analysis into the fixtures, such as the top 6 sides, the worst fixtures, the best fixtures for budget options, a little bit later on throughout the preseason. But for now, I'm going to be giving you guys 4 teams that I think that you can base your own initial drafts off. Something that's been actually quite popular over on Twitter is for you guys to actually screenshot your initial draft and come that game week 1 deadline, look back on it and see how many players have stayed consistent. The deadline is a few weeks away. I think it's about a month and a half, so don't really worry about planning too much as of yet. Still lots of transfers to go through. Is Jack Grealish, Harry Kane, are they both going to go to Man City, or both of those transfers fall through? Sancho's just signed for United. Those United fans, maybe you want to opt for him over Bruno Fernandes. All of these kind of question marks are going to be answered in the upcoming weeks. But the Premier League starts on the 11th of August. Maybe jot that down on your diaries if you guys want to start planning ahead to that game week 1 deadline. But without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So as I mentioned, firstly, I'm going to be going over some fixtures. I know that I've just disappeared quickly, but I just wanted to kind of give you guys the full screen of fixtures. I went and selected 4 teams that I'm going to be focusing on personally that have some of the best, if not the best, fixtures for this upcoming season. So as I usually do, I'm going to be looking at the first 6 fixtures because I think that's quite a good metric and kind of a good kind of placement of fixture to look at to get us a good indication of what players we can be targeting. So first of all, I'm going to be going over Brighton. So Brighton kind of fits into that more budget friendly zone. Some of their options are really cheap, especially in defense. So I would be heavily looking at Brighton, and you'll see in the draft we have 1 or 2 players from Brighton's defense because, as I mentioned, just so cheap and the fixtures look so good. The one thing to note about Brighton is that Ben White has been rumored to have almost completed a transfer to Arsenal. So maybe as you're watching this video, maybe that transfer has already been announced, but at 4.5 he could be a great shout at Arsenal as they have shored up their defense a little bit, and we saw that in the latter stages of last season. But Brighton, their defense, even though Ben White is going to be quite a missed player, I think they do have quite a systematic defense instead of kind of missing a player. And if Ben White does miss out, I'm pretty sure they'll just slot someone else in at centre back and they'll be perfectly ready to go. So Burnley, Watford, Brentford and Crystal Palace within the first 6 fixtures just leads me to want to kind of stack up on Brighton options. Unfortunately, from an attacking point of view, I don't think I'll be drifting to those assets, but from a defense, I think they should be rock solid at the back this season. And as I mentioned, just so cheap, so you might as well take a punt on them. The next team is a little bit more of a familiar side here, Manchester United. So they got some good fixtures and some bad ones, but in terms of the bad ones, they're not that bad at all. So Leeds is considered a great fixture. That's something that I didn't mention. Don't kind of look at the colors because these are FPL's own rankings, not my own rankings. I just kind of wanted to give you guys an indication here that I don't agree necessarily with all their rankings this season, but Leeds is rated as a great fixture there. And to be honest, United Leeds, I think that's going to be an absolute cracker to start off the season for both these sides, and I'm expecting quite a high scoring affair. So I mean, Leeds assets, United assets, maybe you're looking at both those assets. If you are looking maybe for a defender, maybe the other fixtures could lead your eye a little bit. So Southampton, Newcastle, Aston Villa, also kind of pinging in there West Ham and Wolves in the mix of things, leads to a really good opening 6 fixtures for United assets, and I think that I would definitely be looking at having at least 2 of them. So maybe 1 defender, maybe 2 attackers. I know the attack at United's a little bit confusing. Anthony Martial going to come back from that injury. Is Edison Cavani going to kind of hold the line, or will Martial come back? What's going to happen with Sancho? Is he going to kind of bench one of the other options? You probably would assume that maybe Greenwood would get benched and then Rashford on the left, Cavani up front and then Sancho on the right, with Bruno Fernandes filling in at that cam slot. So I mean, does the Sancho signing make Bruno Fernandes an even better signing? I mean, there was this stat over on Twitter that said that Sancho had the record for most penalties won, which actually turned out to be fake news. So don't look at everything on Twitter and think that it's real, but I still think that Bruno Fernandes could be a nice option to go for you. And also the defense from United. So we have Henderson, Dean Henderson, of course, that comes in at 5 million in the goalkeeper department. And there has been some rumors now that De Gea might be on the way out. So if Dean Henderson can lock in that number 1 spot at United, 5 million for a set and forget keeper, it doesn't look too shabby, to be honest. But the United assets are definitely one of the teams that I'll be focusing on because they have a really good opening 6. So for the next 2 teams, going to be taking a trip to Merseyside, with both Everton and Liverpool having a pretty good opening 6. So starting off with Everton, I actually think that they might have some of the best fixtures, if not the best, in the Premier League for the opening 6. We have Southampton, Burnley and Norwich filling in there, with some great fixtures depicted by Leeds, Brighton and Aston Villa. The big news this week has come out that Rafa Benitez, the former Liverpool manager, will be taking over at Everton, and he's kind of a stereotypical defensive set manager. So you can kind of look at assets like a Lucas Digne, maybe even a centre back like a Michael Keane. Those assets should be quite good value in my opinion, because I do think they'll keep a lot more clean sheets than they did last season, and I think that'll be quite easy to do because last season Everton defensively were an absolute shambles at the back. The final team to talk about is a no introduction here. It's of course the Liverpool assets. So one word there, Salah. Everyone's going to kind of go for Mo Salah, and you won't be surprised that everyone even captains him in his opening 2 game weeks. So we've got Norwich, which I think he's the standout captain for, and Norwich Liverpool games are always known for goals. So maybe not for more of a defensive point of view, more for an attacking point of view. I would be heavily targeting those Liverpool assets because these opening 2 fixtures do look quite good. Burnley is always a little bit of a kind of bogey match for Liverpool, but I am kind of expecting them to do quite well in that fixture, considering how Burnley ended last season. Chelsea in the mix there in game week 3, which isn't the best fixture in the world, but I do think that you can kind of ignore that, put that to one side when you have Leeds, Crystal Palace and Brentford up next. Leeds, a great fixture obviously because they were a lot better defensively and also from an attacking point of view towards the end of last season, whereas Crystal Palace and Brentford, I'm expecting a lot of goals there for those Liverpool assets. So Liverpool, definitely look at them, and I would probably recommend going for a defensive option and then also fitting the number 1 man, Mo Salah, in your front line. But now let's go on and look at the actual draft. So now covering the draft, as you guys can see, I've gone for a nice 3-4-3 formation, and I was actually really happy how this draft managed to turn out. We have a really nice balance between those premium assets, we fit in some budget options, and the defense looks absolutely stacked. So yes, we are kind of going big at the back, but I do think that the players in this lineup have the real potential for attacking returns and then also defensive returns. So starting off in goal, there's going to be one man for the job, and that's going to be Sanchez from Brighton. We spoke about Brighton, how good their fixtures are, and at 4.5 million, you can't go wrong with the Brighton goalkeeper. So we mentioned Dean Henderson, maybe if you want to go for a more maybe secure set and forget. I do think United will keep more clean sheets than Brighton do this season, so maybe you can go for that option, but I do personally favor going for a Sanchez, nice 4.5 option. A second goalkeeper is going to be none other than Mr. Cycling GK himself, Ben Foster. Unfortunately, over at Watford, Foster isn't the number 1 player. It's currently Bachmann, who's had a really good kind of Euros for Austria and looked quite rock solid, so I can understand that, but I don't think Ben Foster's going to have to play too much, so he can simply stay on my bench at 4 million. Then going on to the defense, which I'm actually really excited about, I got some really nice mid-range and premium assets here. Starting off with Luke Shaw. I know you might think Luke Shaw, that's not someone that I've seen in many drafts, but just look at him last season. If I do remember correctly, I don't know if this is accurate, but I think that he was, if not the most, had one of the most chances created in the Premier League, and from a fullback position, that always leads to some FPL points. So I'm really hoping that Luke Shaw can continue this kind of form that he's been on. Second player, no introduction there, covered him in the fixtures. It's going to be Lucas Digne. I spoke about Benitez coming into Everton. I think that's going to make them even more secure at the back, and I think that Digne always offers those attacking threat. I'm hoping that he is on set pieces, just going to kind of have to see if Sigurdsson is going to be in the starting lineup, but if Sigurdsson's out, Lucas Digne is the number 1 set piece threat there. So I'm really hoping that he can manage to shore up that defense. I'm talking about Benitez, and then I'll make Lucas Digne an absolute FPL gold this Premier League season. Going on to the last defender, no introduction there, Trent Alexander-Arnold comes in at quite a high price. A little bit surprising there on his price. If I did a price reaction, that would have been one of the players that I was quite surprised by, and that's because he's kept the same price that he was 2 seasons ago. And that was kind of the season that Trent came in, was I think 5 million, absolutely exploded onto the scene, got about 15 assists, plenty of clean sheets. Then last season, Liverpool lost Van Dijk and the clean sheets went downhill. So I'm pretty surprised that considering last season Trent finished about, I think it was about 50 points less than the previous season, and they've kept him at that same price. So obviously FPL Towers is expecting Van Dijk to come straight back in and shore up that defense, which I honestly think that he will, and that's why I think that Trent is still good value at 7.5. Going on to the midfield department, it's kind of the tale of the cheaper options and then the more premium assets. We'll start off with the premium assets because they're the more boring options. Mo Salah, no brainer there, don't have to talk about him. Missing the Olympics, so you'll have a full preseason over at Liverpool, obviously because Egypt aren't playing in the Euros because they're an African country. A little bit of a no-brainer there. Don't really know why I said that fact. And then the second option is going to be Bruno Fernandes. So I know that Bruno had a really bad kind of Euros with Portugal. I wasn't even starting in the starting 11 come the latter stages of the competition. So you might be raising a couple eyebrows there, maybe thinking that Bruno is not in good form, but I think that's purely kind of a systematic thing. I think that for Portugal, they rely on other options, whereas United are heavily reliant on Bruno Fernandes. So I'm still expecting him to have a really good FPL season. Comes in quite a bit expensive, so you can always downgrade him if he doesn't look too good. And then go on to the other two options, the more cheaper options. We've got Rafinha and then we also have Sarr. So Sarr is an absolute baller and that's why I simply have him in my lineup. And also Watford have some great fixtures. So Watford narrowly missed out on kind of my top 4 fixture in the previous talking point that we covered because I just don't know if I trust Watford that much. But I do trust Sarr. And at that price point, not too much risk there as he comes in quite cheap. And I think from an attacking point of view, he's going to be heavily relied upon in that Watford attack. The final play, Rafinha, also a little bit of a no-brainer for me at 6.5 million, just going to prove absolute gold. And because Leeds are such an attacking side, I know towards the end of last season they weren't that strong going forward. They kind of shifted to more of a defensive form, but I do think Rafinha will do well over the entire season. Going on to the front line, we've kind of gone for some mid-range options. No Harry Kane unfortunately here, but if he does get the move to Man City, that'll be kind of a consideration that I have to look at. But we firstly have Iheanacho, then we have Calvert-Lewin, and then finally we've got Ollie Watkins. So going up front with Iheanacho, I know that Leicester just signed Daka and he comes in at the same price that Iheanacho does. So that's a little bit of a weird one there. Maybe FPL are expecting Daka to start, but my kind of thinking is that Vardy and Iheanacho will start up front and then they'll maybe bring in the new striker throughout the season just to get a couple of minutes so that he kind of gets integrated into the Premier League. Calvert-Lewin kind of replicates the things that I've said about Luca Digne with those great fixes for Everton, and we're going to kind of see the style that Benitez plays because I do think he'll play with a solo striker up front, and I think that kind of really suits Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We kind of saw with Ancelotti, he was playing Richarlison up front towards the latter stages of last season and then Calvert-Lewin out wide, which is a little bit weird for me considering the attacking threat off the headers that Calvert-Lewin does produce. So I think that Calvert-Lewin will be a good option here, and I actually think that he's quite well priced. So I'm perfectly happy with kind of investing in that. And the final player is going to be Ollie Watkins. So there's been rumors about Aston Villa potentially looking at Tammy Abraham, and I don't know how that's going to kind of adjust to Ollie Watkins' playing time, but I do think an Aston Villa option, especially for those first 3 game weeks. Aston Villa's first 3 are simply sensational, and then unfortunately it gets a little bit tougher after that. So I'm perfectly fine bringing Ollie Watkins in for those first 3 games and then just assess the situation as it comes about from game week 4 onwards. But I think that Ollie Watkins, absolute workhorse there, so I simply wanted an Aston Villa option. And with kind of Jack Grealish, we don't know what's going to be happening with him. We have Buendia just signed from Norwich for Aston Villa, that comes in at 6.5 as well, so that could be on your radar. But I think that Ollie Watkins right now is more of a talisman than the other two, but if Jack Grealish does stay at Aston Villa, I think that he'll replace Ollie Watkins as my Aston Villa option going forward. But with these initial drafts, obviously they are initial or first drafts, so I'm expecting quite a bit of changes to them. So let's get some conversation going down in the comments below. Post your initial drafts and let's have a little bit of a debate. Maybe you don't like a Luke Shaw, maybe you think Trent's too expensive. Let me know your thoughts down below and I'll be sure to get onto them. But this is basically wrap the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like it if you did and subscribe if you're new or have not subscribed yet. I'll be seeing you guys throughout the preseason, so I would recommend putting those bell notifications on so you don't miss any FPL preseason content coming on to this channel. So I'm going to be signing off. This has been Dayvy FPL and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.